Hey guys, Barry Magliotti back for another episode of the Comeback Game podcast. Today I'm joined by Tim Martin, founder of Success is Voluntary, a boutique consultancy group that specializes in helping organizations recruit, onboard, and train new salespeople. Tim, how you doing today?
Man, I am fantastic. I'm fantastic. When we record this, I'm not sure when it will go out, but when we record it, we're right in the middle of the America's Independence Day, 4th of July. So going to be barbecuing a lot of good meat here in a little bit. So
So, mate, where exactly are you dialing in from today? We're in the States.
yeah, I'm in Phoenix, Arizona. Phoenix, Arizona. It's I don't remember the Celsius, but I think it's right around 45, something like that, or about 102 Fahrenheit today. So yeah, so it's warm, but not
It's a
it's
good
it's
day.
warmer sometimes. So
Fantastic. Mate, do you want to start by just sharing with the people that are watching and listening to this today a little bit about you and what it is that you do?
sure. I have spent the last 22 years in sales leadership, building sales teams from scratch, literally finding that first new salesperson and onboarding them and helping them get up and going, and then eventually creating some leadership and helping them get up and going. So I've done that 5 times. I've taken organizations from zero to as high as $21 million in sales on insurance policies that cost about $600 a year. So you can imagine how many of those you have to sell to get to $21 million. But yeah, it's been a lot of fun. That's new sales, by the way. That doesn't include the renewals that those policies pay every year, year after year. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's been a lot of fun. 22 years. I've pretty much made every mistake possible at least twice. I'm sometimes a slow learner.
So let's dive down into that a little bit. Where did this all start for you?
Man, you know what? It's really interesting. As I was getting ready to come on, I really did some soul searching, and I realized how many mind viruses I had growing up as a kid. I grew up in a very small town in the middle of Wyoming, which is a very desolate state to start out with. Less than 500,000 people live there, and it's a massive geography. And the town grew up in was even really small. I had a lot of love. Don't get me wrong, but we certainly were from very humble means, right? I always wore, we always had food. We never had a problem. It wasn't like I didn't have shoes to wear to school or anything like that. In fact, I got to I got to wear designer clothes all the time. Sears and Roebuck, right? They those jeans that you couldn't even move. They were not exactly designer, but we always had clothes. But I had these mind viruses that I realized. My parents, my dad was was a farmer, came off of a farm, and my mom had a little bit more money growing up. But they would say things like, "Yeah, they have a lot of money, but they're no happier than we are," or "I bet you they're miserable," or those kinds of things, right? And so I kind of had this mind virus growing up that I'll never forget. I'm in high school, and there's an ad running on the radio, a little radio station. They said, mechanics make, they're hiring for mechanics, and it was $400 a week. And I thought, oh my gosh, that would be awesome if I could just make $400 a week.
Wow.
So I almost became a mechanic over that. Nothing wrong with mechanic. That's an honorable profession. Don't get me wrong, but that's kind of what I was. Kind of my mindset, and I'll say this, I'll say it again, I'm sure somewhere, but if I had settled for my wildest dreams, I would have sold myself short.
Mm.
So let me tell you one real quick story about
Back then.
growing up in high school. I had this situation, an opportunity come up. I don't know if your listeners know what drum and bugle corps is. Probably not, because most people in America don't know what drum and bugle corps is. It's a marching band for people that aren't quite nerdy. I mean, they're more nerdy than people in a regular marching band. And they tour this all summer long. These groups tour the country, and Wyoming actually has a really good one. There's about 30 of these groups that go all over the country, and the Casper Troopers were one of the top 5 every year. And so it was a big deal. People came from out of state to march with them, and my buddy and I, we made it. We went through the interview process or the audition process. We made it. And I came back, it was a 3-hour drive home. I was just floating on air. Of course, we didn't call our parents because it was long before cell phones. And I go in, my parents are so proud, and I give them the packet of information about what's going to happen. And I go to bed. And the next morning, my dad just looks white as a ghost. He said, "Can we sit down and talk?" And, that's never a good idea, or never a good story. And he said, "Tim, this is $1,800 for the summer, plus your food. And, we don't have that kind of money." And so, my friend went and I didn't. And again, I'm not crying the blues. I'm just kind of telling you what happened. But I want to put a pin in that. I want to come back to that story in a little bit because I think it's really important. So I get out of high school and I moved to Arizona State. I come down to Arizona to go to Arizona State University. And I went to college because that's what was expected. I know there's a lot of people that are listening to this that can understand that. I had no idea what I wanted to be. The only reason I was there is because it was expected and the girls were pretty. And that's pretty much it. And there was a lot of parties I could go to. So I did have a good time with that. But it was culture shock for me. I joined the marching band there, and that marching band had more people in it than my high school did, right? It's the whole high school. And so it was very much a culture shock, one of the largest universities in the country. And again, I told you, I came from humble means. My parents really couldn't afford much in the way of helping me with tuition and room and board. So I delivered pizza for Domino's Pizza. And like I said, I had a lot of fun. My grades were really, really crappy. And so when ASU stopped cashing my tuition checks, I had to go do something else. It's never a good sign when they won't cash your tuition check. They're like, "Yep, you're done." So I was with Domino's Pizza and I joined their management program and I loved it. I mean, it was like all of a sudden something clicked in me. I had been pretty much a lazy piece of crap up until that point. I mean, if you really want to know the truth. And I was rookie manager of the year for the entire system of Domino's Pizza. There were about 15,000 restaurants at the time. And so I decided that I wanted to franchise. I wanted to buy a Domino's Pizza store. And told you my family comes from very humble means, but my grandfather, who was the farmer, had a really nice farm. He had a lot of land. And when he died, they sold it and my dad inherited the money. And so I went to my dad and I said, "Hey, Dad, let's set this up. You give me the money, I'll go do the work. We'll be partners." And we went from there. So I moved my family totally across the country, and I bought a store that was operating, and we crushed it. I mean, it was like a magic fairy dust that I could sprinkle on everything, and everything was going so awesome that I decided to buy a second store against my wife's advice. She doesn't usually let me forget that. But that second store, it really, I learned some really super important lessons. I think your audience may be able to learn from that, hopefully. And that was, the first one was arrogance. I was really kind of arrogant. I mean, I'd done so well. I just figured, just put the store in my name and everything's going to be great. Right. And I had never run multiple stores. As a manager, I never ran more than one store. How much harder could it be? So I was pretty arrogant. I was also undercapitalized. The money that I got from my dad went it didn't go very far after that first store. So we're trying to get the second store up and running based upon the cash flow of the first store. And that second store is not breaking even. So we're just sucking cash out of that first store. My focus, I already mentioned that my focus was split. And I got a partnership with another guy who didn't bring any money to the table. He was just sweat equity, and he did a good job. It's not his fault, but we just didn't have the money, and he didn't have quite the same skin in the game because he didn't have money. So I started making some bad decisions for cash flow reasons. Number one is I didn't tell my dad. I didn't want to admit to him where I was financially. And so I kept paying him, right? Because I was paying a loan to him. And instead of paying the IRS, Internal Revenue Service, or some of my other creditors, I'm still paying my dad and making sure the payroll gets paid. And we filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy, which means we're going to pay everything back. Just time out, give us a moment. And so all the creditors have to back off. You put together a plan. We worked through it 4 times, and the different creditors just wouldn't go with it. So they flushed me into bankruptcy. It's Chapter 7 bankruptcy, where they liquidate everything. And again, when the sheriff comes and puts locks on your door, you need to go find something else to do, right? So I thought that was the end of that horrible nastiness. And unfortunately, that wasn't the end. I had personally guaranteed a lot of the loans and leases and things like that for the business. And so once the business bankruptcy was done, those people still had the right to come sue me, and they did. We received 5 lawsuits in 11 days. And when I say we, I mean my wife did, because every single time that they rang the doorbell, I wasn't home for whatever reason. So she still hates the doorbell. This is 25 years later, almost 23, 24 years later, something like that. So
there's something interesting that happened there, Tim, as well, that I see within your story. And that's from this psychological aspect that we kind of learn from the inner game, is that, you grow up in this family that you weren't poor, but you weren't far above that line, right? You had what you need, but you weren't flush with cash. And, what I often share is that the experiences that we learn to survive become the experiences that our continued survival depends upon. Mm-hmm. And you learn to survive that experience of not having much money growing up, and you managed to make a few right decisions, attract an experience where you opened that first store, it was highly leveraged, making you a bunch of coin. But to that part of your brain, the creature neurology, it wasn't yet programmed into surviving an experience of wealth or into surviving experience of leverage like that. And although we can experience it for a short period of time, eventually that deep-seated patterning that we've had for so long rears its head, because we feel that part of the brain is freaking out, feeling that we're unsafe, that we've got this chance of dying. It sounds weird, but this is how that critter brain works, that we then start to create an experience that brings us back down to a level of often even below the level in which we've lived at for a majority of our life.
I totally agree with that. I can completely see that. It's been a pattern in my life that I hope I've broken. Let's put it that way. But I have self-sabotaged more than once in my life. And I heard Brian Tracy say a long time ago that if you're in commission sales, which that's the space I've been playing for a long time, that you'll make within 10% of what you really feel you're worth. Because if you're not making it, you'll go to work and work harder. And if you're making too much, you'll slow down because you start getting uncomfortable with the money you're making. So I completely see that. And especially with not only in my own life, but of the people that I've hired and gotten started. I've hired and trained over 2,000 straight commission insurance salespeople in my career. And so I see people that, succeed wildly and don't have near the talent of other people who struggle. And it's not because of effort. I really do believe it has a lot to do with those mind viruses that we sometimes get stuck with.
It's interesting you mentioned the 10% from Brian Tracy, because something that we discovered a little while ago when we started to kind of do some further research is that what we found is that people will be comfortable to earn within 10% of their parents' income combined. Now, here's the freaky part, is that when we started speaking to these people that we put through this study, is a lot of them didn't actually even consciously know what their parents were making. And yet when they asked, sure enough, their income was within 10%, many of them lower, but most of them within 10% of their parents' income combined, because of exactly what you spoke about. Like you say, mind viruses, more so around the environment or the container in which we've grown up in. Now, we can shift this. We can actually shift it. That's the beautiful thing about it. We help our clients do this all the time. But as you know yourself, going through that experience you've had, it can be extremely challenging as well to keep bumping up against that glass ceiling, getting taken back down again, but then having the courage to step back into it and find that ceiling again. Next time, just push it a little bit further and push it a little bit further.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah, no, absolutely. That makes total sense to me. Total sense. So here I am. I have no college degree, right? I've spent my whole life in restaurants up to this point. This is 14 years after I started in the restaurant industry. And what do? I go get a job in a restaurant. I become the general manager of a fast food store, Jack in the Box. They're out in the western United States, so they're not east of the Mississippi. But I call it the year from hell because it just wasn't. It was ugly, but I'm not going to get deep into faith. I don't think that's necessarily appropriate. But I had a pretty big experience. Felt like I got back on track in my faith, and so I'm sitting there. It's about right on a year. And I'm sitting there on a Sunday evening, and with this company, you had to be in at 3 a.m. on Monday morning to do inventory and get all the payroll and all that stuff for the weekend. And I'm in tears. I'm literally in tears because I don't want to go in. I'm telling you, this is a year from hell. I'm hating it. I don't want to go in. And so I just literally said a prayer. I said, if this is what you want me to do, God, I'll do it for the rest of my life, and I'll stop whining. I'll stop whining. If it isn't, then I hope you'll show me. And so I go in and I do my inventory. I come out, and my supervisor is in the restaurant. He's eating breakfast, and I kind of yelled at the shift leader. I said, when Keith walks in the building, you tell me. He goes, well, he didn't want you to be bothered. He said, he knew you were under deadline. I said, okay, well. So I go and I sit down with him. His name's Keith. And I said, Keith, what's going on? And he's got all these binders in front of him. He's got them all open. And he's like, let's go through this, Tim. He goes, man, your mystery customer scores are some of the best in the country. Your profitability is way up. Your sales are way up. All these things. He said, but here's the thing. I don't get the sense that you want to retire from this company, that you want to be here long term. And I said, God, I hope not. I just said it like that. I don't want to retire from here. No. And he said, that's kind of what I felt. He goes, this is really crazy. I don't know why I'm doing this, but why don't we call today your last day, and we'll pay you for 3 months and, pay you for your insurance and all that. On the food service industry, you don't get 3 minutes severance, let alone 3 months. So it just was unbelievable. So my wife worked right around the corner, and it's close enough that I could walk. And I walked over there and said, guess what? I got fired. I was so excited that I got fired. And I didn't even know why. I just knew something had changed. And so a friend of mine was a district manager for an insurance company by the name of Aflac, which at that time nobody had ever even heard of. Nobody. Yeah. I mean, they're big now in the United States, but nobody had even heard of them. And I was talking to him. He said, I knew he was in insurance. I knew he lived on a golf course. I knew he drove Lexus. His parents, they didn't have any money, so I knew it wasn't coming from them. And so I said, hey, I don't know what your company even does. I know they're in insurance somehow. Do you ever hire anybody without experience? And he said, well, we do. I said, well, who would I need to talk to? He goes, well, I'm the guy. And so we sat down, and I was so excited. I went home and I told my wife, I said, we just went through bankruptcy a year ago. We're still working out from lawsuits. I just got fired, and I want to go straight commission insurance sales. And she was fine. She's like, I thought there was going to be really, really hard to sell her on it. And she was excited. And so we started, and I couldn't even spell insurance when I started, and never had done sales other than, would you like breadsticks with that? But I started listening to Brian Tracy and Tom Hopkins and Jim Rohn and all these people, and started reading books by John Maxwell and Zig Ziglar and Les Brown, and my faith system just completely started to change. It wasn't overnight, but it started to change, and it wasn't like it was a nice linear climb either. We'd get 2 steps forward and 1 step back, but these lawsuits just kind of settled themselves. Again, I don't believe in coincidence. I'm a man of faith, and but it was just unbelievable, some of the stuff that happened. For instance, I got a call from my lawyer saying, "Hey, one of your creditors has agreed to settle a $20,000 debt for $6,000. What do you want me to tell him?" I said, "Tell him yes." He goes, "Tim, do you have that money?" I said, "No, I don't have that money." And he said, "Well, it's pretty serious. You gotta, if we say yes and you don't pay it, not only are you going to be owed the 20, but they're going to tack on a whole bunch of other fees." I said, "Take it, tell them or take the deal." That afternoon, I drove home and there was a check in my mailbox for $6,600. My wife's father had passed away 2 years prior, and there was he had a piece of property that we didn't even know existed, that commercial property that the people had paid on it for several years, and then there was a period of time where they didn't pay, and then there was a balloon payment. Well, that was the balloon payment. Was about $13,000, and her brother and her split that, and so here's a check in the mailbox that afternoon. And so those kinds of things, all these things I'm reading and listening to, all of a sudden it just started to click. And within 5 months, I was promoted, and another 9 months after that, I was promoted again. And each one of these, when I say promoted, means I had a better title and a little better contract, but each time I started at scratch. So, so it's me and, me. And so let's go find some people and let's build it. And so that's kind of my story. I went into corporate America eventually for 5 years and just absolutely killed it. Had a great time. I don't want to get deep into some of the weeds here, but I had some health issues. And so at the end of 2017, I left corporate America and went and started consulting, and have had so much fun, been speaking all over the country and consulting. And I have a handful of coaching clients. I had more, but I keep firing them and bringing on new ones, and they pay more. So that works out okay.
So, mate, if you were to look back at the last 20 odd years of your life and look to summarize and distill down the 3 key learnings out of that experience, what would they be? What would be the 3 key learnings or the 3 key pieces of advice you'd like to share?
The first one is, if you're in leadership, you have to believe in your people before they do. I just think that is a huge thing. If you are putting numbers on people's heads, right? I tend to do that. You're a 10, that guy's a 5. That just for their abilities and all those, how they strike me. Oftentimes, I see leaders who they have somebody on their team, and they have put a 5 on them, and they never get over that. And so they see him as a 5 and they treat him as a 5. And I just really believe that you have to believe in your people before they believe in themselves. So I think that's in leadership. I think that's a huge thing.
Very true.
Second thing is, I did for my coach, I did this exercise where we had to ask 5 people to give 5 traits about you that make you successful. And I won't get into all of it, but there were some traits, and he told us this happens all the time, is there some traits that people see in you that you don't even see in yourself. There's a lot that you see and you expect everybody to see. There's some that you see in yourself and you're just kind of surprised other people see it, right? You didn't realize it. And then there's some stuff that you see you don't see in yourself, or you certainly don't notice that if people are paying attention. You don't even necessarily see in yourself. And so I think those are the ones that really form your story, right? When you start seeing, again, I'm not suggesting for a second that we have to live up to somebody else's expectations or any of those things. But when we start to see what makes us successful through the people that we admire the most, I think that's something we can leverage. And so it's one of those things that I found to be a big part. And then the third thing, and this is just, it sounds so cliche, and we've already kind of talked about it, but it is, you've got to constantly expand your belief system. If you're making solid mid six figures, then there's no reason that you shouldn't be starting to believe that you can make $1 million. If you're making $1 million, then why can't you get to, that 7-figure mark? And I'm not talking about sales. I'm talking about income here. And so, I just think that I just really believe that you have to continue to grow your faith system, your belief system. I know a lot of people that have died a long time ago, just haven't died, they just haven't laid down yet, right? They died a long time ago, but just haven't laid down. So, and you do that through, it's not just about listening to tapes, but it's also about improving your skills and those kinds of things, investing in yourself, getting a coach, getting part of a mastermind group, being plugged in. And of course, I'm going to say that because I lead those kinds of things, but I tell people all the time, I'm probably not your right coach. Get one anyway, right? Yeah. So get one anyway.
Yeah. I think you're right. Like, ultimately, there's nothing stopping us from having what we want. We'd simply have it now. And often it's not necessarily what the person's doing, but it's who they're being that's preventing them from having what they want. And once there's a shift with their being, their state of being, naturally and automatically what they're doing starts to shift to resonate with that new way of being.
Yeah, you can't compartmentalize. We've oftentimes we can compartmentalize, be somebody different at church than we are at home, than we are at work. And, that just isn't the case. So it just doesn't work that way at all. And so you're dead on that. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, Tim, thank you so much for all you've shared. How can the viewers and listeners that are checking this out today connect with you if they feel to?
Yeah, absolutely. Love to talk to them. I just completely redid my website. I have a web developer. I've never had a web developer. See, thinking big. I had a designer that I'm still working with on some other stuff in Switzerland. My web designer is in India. It's been amazing. So successesvoluntary.com. It's the podcast. I have a podcast, successesvoluntary.com. The podcast is completely done. The blog will be up in the next week or so. I don't know when this is going to air. Probably be up by the time you guys listen to this. But check out the podcast for sure. I've had some fantastic guests on, including this Barry guy out of Australia. He came on a while ago. He's awesome. But at any rate, and there's a contact form there. Like I said, I do some personal coaching. I do speaking. There's a speakers page, link to my speakers page there as well. And that's the best place to find me. I'm all over. I'm on LinkedIn and Twitter and Facebook, under Successes Voluntary, of course, as well. So.
Fantastic. Awesome. And also too, like, if you're watching or listening to this and you're wanting to shift some of those mind viruses that we spoke about earlier, or maybe you're noticing that your income level or your business is plateaued out, I'd love for you to jump on the gamechangers.com.au, book a time to speak to one of my team, and they can certainly help to dive into the weeds and work out where you might be stuck and how we can help you to move past being stopped to being successful. Tim, so grateful to have you on the show today, mate.
Yeah, thank you for letting me come on. It was better than therapy. It was a lot cheaper than going to a therapist. So
we'll let you get back to cooking up your meat for Independence Day.
All right. Thank you so much. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Tim. If you're in a position that many of our clients were before joining us, which is that your business is controlling you rather than you controlling your business, we would love to have a chat to you to see whether or not we might be the right fit to partner with you to help you grow and succeed in business. And over the past 8 years, we've helped hundreds of business owners around the world to grow, scale, and succeed in business. Many of our clients report that we've helped them to triple their profits and double their time off in 12 months or less. If you jump onto YouTube and notice the hundreds of testimonies, you'd see that this is a common theme amongst them. If you're a business owner that's generating more than $300,000 a year in annual revenue, whether it's $500 million, $5 million, even $10 million a year, and you're looking to take your business and your life to the next level, we might be able to help. If you're noticing that your business is lacking structure, maybe systems or processes, maybe you're not quite attracting enough or the right type of quality leads, making enough sales, or maybe you're even having issues finding, hiring, retaining, and training the right team members, we could be a fit for you. Ultimately, we believe that we never have business problems, we have personal problems that are expressed through our business, and a lot of the work we do is with you as the business owner, helping you to constantly upgrade the way that you see life, the way that you make decisions, and the way that you help construct a profitable and purpose-driven business. In order for us to do that though, you need to book in a quick 15-minute application call with one of our scaling specialists here at the Game Changers. Through that 15-minute call, we're going to ask you a bunch of questions to see if or how we might better help you. If we can't help you, we'll let you know politely and do our best to point in the direction of someone that can. However, if we can help you, we'll look at booking you a 1-hour game plan session where we're going to dive a lot deeper into where you and your business are at right now, where it is that you want to go in the next 3, 5, and 10 years' time, and what are the potential roadblocks or challenges or even opportunities that are along the journey in order for you to get there faster. If you're really feeling that it's time for you to experience the love and the joy of running a business again, if you're really wanting to experience a business that does actually operate without you while still producing profit, we may very well be the right fit. So book in a 15-minute call, we can have a chat and see where we go from there. My name is Brad Bodidi, and thanks for listening. Hopefully we get a chance to talk soon.